Hi everyone, and welcome back to the mini-series about our studio and our beautiful blood pressure data. And in the last series, we talked about how to import the data into our R environment. And today I'm going to show you how to make it beautiful, how to visualize all this data. So stay tuned. So let's start right off where we left last time. And that's exactly in our RStudio environment. And here you can see we already imported all the libraries. We imported all the data from our datasheet and looked up how it's actually, if it worked or not. We can delete now the head here to make it a little bit more beautiful. Also here you can delete one row, and here we, as you can remember, we just formatted basically one column, the time column, and today we are going to start with a ggplot. So this is our first basically plot we're going to make, and here you have to type in the brackets basically the data. You can see here we have this little yellow box, and the first thing we have to put in is the data. So of course for us it's BP data, and the next thing in the plot is the mapping. So we want to map it with AES, and the x-axis is of course the time. So what does that mean? So the x-axis, of course, the time, because it's a time series. So every data point has a specific time. If I look up here, the console, basically, you can see every time stamp basically has values, and those will be mapped. And now we have to decide what kind of plot we want. So of course we're in the medical sector, so we have to do a line plot. But a line plot would be a little bit boring, so we combine with ggplot a line plot and the point plot, basically geom points is it called. So how are we going to do that? We make a little tab, so we have here a distance, so that means that we continue to write. And I forgot something, we have to add here a plus, and then when we press enter it automatically does that, so there's a small indent. Of course there is now an unexpected end of document because we're not finished coding. Don't get confused by it, we're really not done coding yet, so there's a lot of lines we're going to add. So I will first start with geom line, so we do a line plot, and on our y-axis is basically the systolic pressure, pressure, and of course I have to add AES and do it like this. And then we can decide the color, which is here systolic. I will explain later why we does that, so just keep following me. And then I do a plus, and we do a geom point. We do the same thing, AES, and then y-axis is of course the systolic pressure, and the color here is also systolic. I will explain it at the very end why we do that, what we're doing now. But basically here is we do a geom line and a geom point. So we have a plot. So you can imagine the first term you use is basically, I want to have a plot. Okay. Then the next thing we are going to add is basically a line plot. So we add a line plot to our plot, And then we add a point plot. So it's everything on the same visualization, basically, or on the same graph. And the next thing we're going to add is, you probably guessed right, another line plot, because we want to add three things: the systolic pressure, the diastolic pressure, and the pulse. So everything is on one graph. So we are going to type basically the same thing. For the diastolic pressure, sorry, it's not with the Y, diastolic pressure. The color here again is, of course, not systolic, so it's diastolic. And then we add a plus, and of course we are going to use geom point like this, AES, and then it's a little bit repetitive, but just stick with me. You can of course skip it if you are already bored, but yeah, let's do it. Diastolic pressure. We add another bracket, and oh, sorry, that's a mistake. A plus, of course, and here we are going to add another geom line. And this one, of course, is for the pulse. So the Y is now pulse equals pulse. Then we have color color equals pulse. Or let's call it not pulse, let's call it heart rate. That would be the more fitting term. Heart pulse, no, heart rate. Like this. And geom point, sorry about, no. Geom point like this. AES. Oh. So we open a bracket again. Y is pulse. And color is also heart rate equals heart rate, like this. And then we close the bracket and we add another plus. No, it's fine like that. Let's just run this code and see what's happening. Okay, cool. So we have the first plot. I will show you right now. Congratulations, that's your first plot. So basically what you can see on the plot, I will put it here, is basically that you have a top row, which is now blue, which is the systolic pressure. That would be entirely wrong. Then you have the diastolic pressure, which is red. It's actually the other way around. And of course you have the green one, the pulse or heart rate. And on the x-axis you can see it's a time series, so you can see dates. So now let's go back to our screen and add some additional things. What we can add here, of course we have to add a plus first, is we have to manually scale the color, because if a doctor would see this and the systolic blood pressure would be blue, he would rip my head off. I'm not kidding. And let's do this. So scale color and scale color manually. So we have to type in manual, right? And we have the values. The values are, and this is a special case here, if in R there is a bracket with a lot of values inside, you have to add C in front of it. Don't ask me why, it's just how it is. So we add C, so we have systolic. Systolic is, of course, oh, I have to go out of the bracket or the quotes. Of course it's red, and the beauty of RStudio is that it actually shows that it is red. And here we have the diastolic blood pressure equals blue, which is also very beautiful. Then we have another value, which is the heart rate. And the heart rate, we just keep it gray like this, and let's actually use dark gray. I think that's more beautiful. And what we also can add is now what we call lapse. Lapse is the term basically just to make the plot scientific and to make the plot way more understandable. And that's with a title, subtitle, and all the other things that come with it. So let's go back to our screen. So we have a title. Let's call it blood pressure of Stephen Shoes. And Stephen Shoes was born in 1984. And yeah, that's how we're going to do it. Like this. Oh, I have to go out of the thing. All right, and then we have a subtitle. And the subtitle will be a little bit special. So here we have the subtitle, and now we want to add the average systolic pressure and the average diastolic pressure. For that, we want to paste together a text and a calculation. Basically, what we're going to do is we take the average of the systolic pressure and we paste it together with the round, so it's a rounded number, of the mean, which is basically the term for average, of the BP data, of course, and here we take the column of the systolic pressure. So every value in the column of the systolic pressure is now mean, which means basically that we take the average of every systolic pressure values in the BP data set and round it. Now we have to specify, okay, we want to round it, so we need to specify here with a comma and we say digit or digits 1. So that means easily explained, we want just 1 digit behind the comma. And now we want to add another average diastolic, and for that we are going to do 1 space and then this slash and the average for the diastolic. The reason why I did this is just because it looks afterwards a little bit more beautiful, more, let's say, orderly. And then we are going to do basically the same thing. We round the value, we take the mean of it, we take the BP data set, and then of course here we take the diastolic pressure. We're going to specify the digits, which is in this case also 1. And then we are, I think, relatively set. Let's see. I think there needs to be another one of those. Yes, so as you can see, there is the plot. And we have here the average systolic pressure is 138.5, and here the average diastolic pressure is 67.7. And yeah, that's data is just very beautiful. And then we continue. So after we have now the subtitle, we want to also have a caption. Why do we want to have the caption? To make a little bit, to play a little bit around and add, for example, the system we are using to measure our blood pressure, basically. So let's do this. We have here, of course, we're still in the labs, so you have to use a comma, and here we can delete one of the brackets because we're not at the end, so we just add a caption. This is, of course, let's say it's a system. We call it the blood measure machine. The blood measure machine XT290. Great. What an amazing machine. And now we are going to use another comma, and actually we can plot that. So I close the bracket and I plot it to show you exactly how it looks like. And this is what comes out. Basically here you can see it's a caption on the button here. And yeah, it's I think it's amazing. All right, and now we have to do something very important. We take away the column again, and then we use an additional comma to, we take the bracket away and we use an additional comma. And now we have to do something very important, and this is actually one of the most important things. We have to specify the x-axis and the y-axis. What I mean with specify is basically we just name the axis, and here it's of course, x-axis is of course the date. You can also call it time, but we are going to name also the y-axis, and that's of course the blood pressure. And we actually can add here millimeters Hg, which is essentially just how you measure the blood pressure. And the color, I know it's a little bit tricky that it's called the color, but what it essentially does, I will show you just when I plot it. And so we're done here, we plot it again, and then you can see on the right hand side the legend is now basically the color. So we have here a beautiful legend. That's essentially what it does, and we named now our axis, which is pretty cool. So today we learned a lot of different things, and you created your first R plot, and it really looks already amazing. In the next video, I'm going to show you another little trick, or a lot of little tricks to make it even more beautiful. And right now, I just want to say thank you for watching, if you stayed until the end. And if you liked it, leave a thumbs up there and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I see you next week. Goodbye.